What if I told you the exact same rental property in one state makes you wealthy, while in the other one it can make you go bankrupt? In one state, a tenant stops paying the rent and you can remove them in 2 to 4 weeks. In the other state, it can take you up to 12 months. This is exactly why smart investors just don't buy rental properties. They buy and invest in the right states, in the right investment climate, or in the right countries. Today we break down the most landlord-friendly states in America, the most unfriendly landlord states in America, what it means, the regulations for your property and why it's so important, and what politics can have for influence in your real estate investing career. Before we rank the states, we need to define what does landlord-friendly mean. So landlord-friendly means the rules are in favor of landlords. So how does it work in practice? So first of all, there's no rental caps or high taxes, lower property taxes. So the taxes in general are not as high for the purchase or the maintenance all year round for property taxes. Then the rental caps, what does it mean? There's no cap on the rent you can charge. It's free market. So in this way, you can just charge whatever the market determines. Then eviction process. If a tenant doesn't pay the rent, you can evict them very fast because the process is made for the landlords. It's easier, so the tenants are less protected. So it means in practice, maybe 4 weeks, 6 weeks, up to 2 months, you can evict them. Then the last one, contracts. You can set up the contracts how you like from the date to end. Month to month, 1 year, 2 years, long term. It's very flexible, and this makes it very easy to be a landlord there, because if you just want to rent it out for 6 months, try out the tenant and then give him a longer term contract, you can do that. So tenant friendly states are basically the opposite of landlord friendly states, and here's why you shouldn't invest in them. So imagine the tenant stops paying the rent, then if you want to evict them, to get it to the court, it will take a long time. So for the court accepts it's going to take a couple of months. Then once you get the court approval to evict the tenant, the whole process is also going to take way longer. So in general, it can take up to 6 to 12 months before you can evict a tenant. Then another thing is rental caps. They can put rental caps in place. What does it mean? They determine how much maximum rent you can ask in that specific area for the specific house based on their way of calculations. So imagine we had that in Barcelona, where the real estate, they put rental caps in place. The maximum you could ask for an apartment of 400,000 euros is only 1,300 euros. This is like an example. Of course, it depends on the apartment and neighborhood. But yeah, it's basically not rewarding anymore because your mortgage is almost the same as the rental cap, and you have negative cash flow with all your capex, vacancy, cost, all included. You're going to have a negative cash flow. So you're only doing it for the appreciation. Then you can propose higher transfer tax. In Barcelona, for example, you have 10% transfer tax. Then if you want to buy more properties and you have like 5 properties or more, they introduced a 20% transfer tax overnight. This isn't in the United States as much, but of course this can happen also in the tenant-friendly states, in more socialistic areas, because they just want to protect the tenants, and they're going to introduce different laws overnight that makes it more difficult for you as a landlord to operate. So in the end, they will give heavy restrictions on landlords. It's hard to get permits. The whole process just takes long. If you have a tenant that doesn't pay, you have to subsidize your apartment or your house for 6 till 9 months, 12 months. You still have to pay the mortgage, utilities maybe, the process cost, the eviction cost. All this stuff is going to pile up and you will lose a lot of money. Yeah, maybe you can claim it at the tenant, but if they get broke, there's nothing to claim, right? So this is also something to think about, and you just lose a lot of revenue, a lot of headache for no reason. Doesn't mean these tenant-friendly states are bad. It's just in favor of tenants, and that's the system how they operate. But we as a real estate investor, of course, we want the best system for us. So I would avoid those places. Yes, you can do fix and flips, or maybe some Airbnb, short-term rental, if that allows it. But in general, I would just go where you are treated best, because why take the unnecessary risk and get maybe the same or lower returns with the risk that your tenant is there and you have to go through the whole process. So in general, I would say go for landlord-friendly states, go for landlord-friendly countries, and invest your money where you're treated best. And I'm talking from experience, first moving to Barcelona, investing in real estate over here, help foreign investors. If I look back to it, I would have studied more the fundamentals of the government. Before, the rules were a bit more in favor for the landlord, but because of the political climate, they put a lot of pressure on the regulation. And yeah, just looking back at it, I just didn't understand the Spanish political system enough to see that this maybe could go the other way for the regulation in real estate in Spain. And then all these regulations were happening, so I was like, I need to move my business to a more favorable environment where I can plan for the long term instead of investing and being heavily independent on the Spanish government that is so unfriendly to business owners and landlords. So I was like, okay, I need to go to a place where I'm treated better. And that's why I decided to move my business to the United States and help foreigners to invest in Ohio, a landlord-friendly state. Okay, now let's go to the list of most landlord-friendly states where you want to invest your money. And the first one is a very famous one. It's Texas. So get your cowboy hat on and let's go to Texas. So basically, why should you invest in Texas real estate? First of all, the government is just very pro-business friendly, Republican stronghold. They're for lower taxes, landlord rights, property rights, all for this. Gun rights, you name it, they're very conservative. And it means they're also way more pro-business friendly. Texas, growing economy, growing job market. A lot of people are moving there from other states. No state income tax, very business friendly. One downside of Texas is that the property taxes are slightly on the higher side. So look very carefully and know exactly the numbers, what your property tax is going to be, and maybe the property taxes can rise. So I've seen some news that they maybe want to abolish the property taxes, but as of today, I don't know if that's going to happen, but maybe in the future it will. And this will have, of course, an even more positive impact on the property taxes and the real estate investing in Texas. The next one is the sunny Florida, and Florida attracts a lot of people because of the good weather, pro-business, no state income tax. A lot of people from California are actually moving to Florida. Fast eviction process, strong rental demand. Prices are a bit high, yes. So yeah, do your calculations, but Florida is definitely a pro-landlord state. However, the insurance can go up very fast, especially in coastal areas because of the hurricanes and natural disasters. So this is an con of investing in Florida, because your insurance can be very expensive. But in the end, if you find a place where the numbers make sense, Florida is a good investment destination. Next one is where I'm personally investing, and it's Ohio. And Ohio is a pro-landlord state, easy to evict tenants, no transfer tax, no high rental caps. It's just very pro-landlord friendly. And Ohio has low entry prices. You can find investment properties for $150,000 to $250,000 with good cash flowing returns. So high cash flow, pro landlord, easy to evict tenants, no rental caps. Maybe the appreciation is a bit lower compared to other states, but it's a very stable bet and you can get good returns, high cash flow. So for me, Ohio is the way to go. Another important thing is no natural disasters, just a few tornadoes, but mostly they don't touch the bigger cities. So insurance costs are way lower than, for example, in Florida. So for me, Ohio is a no-brainer. So that's why I'm also investing over there. Okay, then now let's go to the places you should avoid as a real estate investor, in my opinion. The first one of the most unfriendly landlord states, very famous one, California. California is one of the most unfriendly landlord states in the United States. Yes, appreciation is very good, but operational, it can be a very headache. And I've heard some horror stories from investors that invest in California. So why should you invest in California? First, again, very long eviction process, very pro-tenant rights. Even during COVID, they froze the rent payments. So they say like, oh, tenants are in trouble, you cannot evict them out. People stay there for 1-2 years that didn't pay anything, and the landlord still had to pay the mortgage, but they couldn't evict them. So they were just throwing the landlords under the bus, and people got in very deep problems because of that. In general, very heavy regulation. Permits are a disaster to get. Just the whole process of getting a permit can take up to 1 to 2 years. Of course, depending what kind of permit you're getting. but I heard some horror stories from investors in California. So for me, as a foreign investor, it just doesn't make sense to buy something there, because why would I invest my money in such a socialist environment? Yes, you can have good appreciation, but then I can just invest my money in Netherlands. It's basically the same, or maybe a bit more landlord friendly. So for me, California is just a no-go. Regulation is just too much. California is a democratic stronghold, so I don't think the rules are going to change anytime soon in favor of landlords. So for me, it's just better to avoid California at all. Maybe if you want full appreciation, or you just want to store your money, you love California, or you're just like, you live there, okay, then maybe makes sense. But for me, it just really doesn't make sense to invest over there. Also, the prices are very expensive. It's hard to find anything that cash flows. So just overall, for me, it's just a no-go. Then the next one on the list is New York, one of the most famous cities in the world. Beautiful city, but very unfriendly towards landlords, especially now with the new elected mayor, Zoran Mandani. He basically says, tax the rich, we don't like landlords, rent freezing, rental caps, higher property taxes, everything you don't want to hear as a landlord, basically. So for me, combined with the high property purchase prices, I mean, before, like, let's say you have like a net worth of like a couple million and you want to store your wealth in a high appreciating market, makes sense. New York is a good choice because it's been appreciating very good, because it's scarce. Like, a lot of people want to go there. It's like one of those cities that's the center of the world. So in that sense, I understand. But if you're just a beginner investor, you want appreciation, you want mainly cash flow, yeah, then New York wouldn't have been your first choice anyway. And now, with all this more regulation and basically anti-business, anti-investor stance, I would highly recommend not investing in New York and go to one of the landlord-friendly states. Okay, the next one is Oregon, and Oregon was one of the first states that introduced statewide rent control. So they were freezing the rent, putting rental caps in place. Yes, very good for the tenants, but a disaster for landlords, because maybe you did your calculations, you had certain return in your mind, and they just freeze the rent. So for me, that's already a huge red flag, and you should avoid those places, because it's just the first set is already done. If they do this kind of regulations, it will just increase over time. So for me, that gives a lot of uncertainty, and I would just avoid these kind of states because they're just better alternatives. Then the next one is Illinois. Illinois is a very interesting market because Chicago is booming. It attracts a lot of people, but the property taxes are very high, and in the future, maybe they will increase even more. So this is also, again, a red signal, because maybe on paper you have a good cash flowing property, but then if the property taxes increase by 30%, your cash flow just disappears. So yeah, for me, that's again a red flag. I wouldn't choose Illinois based on that. So just go to pro-landlord states and avoid Illinois. But of course, there's still people that can make money there, invest. But let's say you're from Illinois, you're in Chicago. I of course understand why you would invest there, because if you're local, you know your neighborhood, you know the regulation better. But if you're out-of-state investor or foreign investor, yeah, why should you choose a place that's non-favorable in the first place, right? So that gives a little bit the summary of the video. So if you're an out-of-state investor, a foreign investor, why should you choose places that treat landlords bad and you're not welcome to invest your money? You should go to places where you're treated well, because the appreciation, the property price don't matter if the regulation is against your favor, because in the worst, you always have to think about the worst case scenario, right? So yes, maybe you have some good appreciation, but then you have no tenant that's paying the rent for like 1 to 2 years and he's destroying your place and you can't evict him. Yeah, you're farther off from house than if you have an investment property in a state where the same thing happens, and within 1 month the tenant is vacant and you can move on, right? So again, if you live in one of these cities and this is your operational area, completely understand, because you're living there. Maybe you just don't want to invest out of state or in another country. Completely understand why you're investing in that area. However, if you can choose each market, then choose the right one, yeah, from day one. And looking back in time, when I moved to Spain, when I started investing here, I should have done more due diligence. Like, hey, what's the Spanish government, their plan? How is the electorate? How is it going to influence maybe the real estate market? I didn't do enough research in the end. And that's why I really choose a pro-landlord country where in certain environments in these states, I can operate my business in the long term. That's why, for example, I would invest in the UAE. Why? Because the government is pro-business, pro-landlords. So look for countries, areas, states where you are treated best. So this was the end of the video. Let me know in which states you're investing in, what states are interesting, and where you shouldn't invest according to you. If you want to invest in real estate in the United States and specifically in Ohio, I can help you out. So check out my website, greenroadsrealestate.com. We help foreign investors, but we can also help American investors buy suitable, good rental properties in Ohio, Columbus, Cleveland, high cash flow, pro-landlord laws. So if you're interested in that, go to my website and schedule a call with me and we can see how we can help you further. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one. Peace out.